hanggang Pasko at magiging maligaya na sana ang Pasko natin. I mean, yan yung inaasahan natin.
Nakita na ho natin na kaya natin lahat pababain ang mga kaso kahit na gaano ka-dangerous ang variant na meron tayo ngayon. Sa Pasko, baka better Christmas na, baka mas marami ng bukas. Yan po ang ating hope, yan ang gusto natin at sana marating natin kung patuloy po nating pag-iigtingin ang mga ginagawa natin ngayon.
The government will start vaccinating the general adult population as the health department says the daily number of new COVID-19 cases are declining. But the Philippines remains in the worst in global COVID-19 recovery rankings. What are the prospects for increased mobility and less restrictions in the coming months? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. With me online, Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5 and Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. Chiefs.
Good evening.
Hi,
Good evening.
Rob. Hi,
Nana.
Ami.
Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. Although we're coming off a very sad weekend, of course.
Oo nga.
Yeah.
We had to say goodbye
Chito.
to our,
Oo, hindi
a real patriot. I'm fortunate to say
Yeah.
a real friend, Chito Gascon. Hanggang ngayon nalulungkot ako when I think about it. But in the meantime, Ami, there are other stories that we have to keep up with. We have to persevere and a lot of stories starting with sa elections. Makulay pa rin, ano? Ang COMELEC wasn't quite happy with some of the things that Senator and presidential candidate Bato de la Rosa said today.
Parang inamin niya virtually na placeholder lang siya, no? Diba? At talagang mag-giveaway siya. So, hindi nga siya seryoso. So, as far as si Attorney Menes is concerned, parang nuisance candidate siya, diba? Because he's just filing for other reasons other than being serious. But then again, of course, sila PDP laban po si faction denied what he said, what Bato said. It's a funny thing, right?
Actually, yung denial was not quite a denial. No? Kasi sabi nila, pag tumakbo si Sara, di tatanggapin namin siya yung standard there.
At saka,
Diba?
Candidate.
Tsaka paano mo i-deny si General Bato? Because in fairness to the guy, we like talking to General Bato dahil walang patumpik-tumpik yan. Di pagka tinanong mo, diretso
He
yun sa...
wears his heart on his sleeve. I mean, the guy just says what he feels, right? Emotional yun diba?
Practically, ginising lang nung tanghali para sabihin na, oy, pwede ka ba mamaya? In fact, di ba?
Marami naman siya, di ba? Kaya ngayon may proposal nga na magkaroon ng law against nuisance candidates. Ewan ko kung nagpapata yun. Yan, may mga
Parang a little too late. Ang dami talaga. Ilan? 270 plus yata. No?
Sinabi naman ng COMELEC, maraming malalaga sa party list and of course, maraming malalaga sa presidential list pa lang kasi 97 yata.
Grabe, 97. Wow.
Anyway.
Daming trabaho ng COMELEC.
Parang akalain mo yun, mas mahirap ang pag-usapan yung politika kaysa sa topic natin ngayon.
Hindi, at least nag-umpisa yung vaccine.
Times are changing.
Pag-usapan natin yung mas madali. COVID ang pag-usapan natin. We begin tonight with Professor Guido David of the Octa Research Group. Good evening, Professor David.
Good evening.
Good evening, Rob.
Hi, good evening, Robbie, Ami, Lucy. Good to see you again.
Good to see you with good news.
Sana good news kasi COVID nakakarami ka na. Talagang nakakarami ka na. Talagang but Prof, we are seeing numbers going down. I think we hit another low. I mean, since the last surge. But of course, always in the back of our minds na bumababa raw ang testing. But what's the full context here? How should we appreciate the numbers?
Well, naman, Robbie, we're always transparent with the data. And what we're seeing is a definite downward trend. We have been seeing this since nung September 11 pa. Actually, around September, I believe September 16 or something like that. Sinabi na natin, we may have peaked. And just to contextualize, the reason we can't declare that the peak came already at that time was hindi natin alam, baka tumaas pa. I mean, the data is medyo erratic. Sometimes, like yesterday, 12,000, today 8,000. So may mga backlog kasi sa data, and that makes it a little bit more erratic. And that's why we have to look at the trends. And right now, after weeks of decline, we can see naman talaga that the cases are decreasing. Yes, kumonti yung testing, but actually may paper akong ilalabas na yung testing, bumababa rin talaga siya pag bumababa yung surge or nawawala yung surge pag bumababa yung bilang ng cases because it makes sense na
yes.
pag konti nagkakasakit, konti lang yung pinapatest, right? It makes sense. And we can see the pattern. Pag walang surge on a good time, yung testing natin, it goes down to around 50,000 na lang per day for without the surge pag medyo endemic stage. So it follows then. And the positivity rate's going down, kaya we're sure na it's on a downward trend. And hospitalization, lumuluwag na siya sa NCR. It's only nasa 53%. Hindi naman luluwag yung hospitalization kung marami pa rin cases kahit hindi natetest.
Right.
Because,
Yeah. In one of your interviews here, you said that you still can't quite figure out whether it's a matter of Delta variant's lifespan. I remember that you said there seems to be a lifespan for the Delta variant, and you're attributing the downtrend in a way to that. Have you confirmed anything as far as the life of the Delta variant is concerned? And for that matter, any variant, no?
Right. Actually, we were talking about any variant nun and it doesn't mean na may lifespan sila na after 2 to 3 months namamatay na lang sila or nawawala because it stays there. It will infect a small percentage of the population. Kasi if we rewind back to let's say 2020 last year, nagkaroon tayo ng surge nung July to August. I think it started around June, and it was about 2 to 3 months. No, nag-end siya by late August. Bumaba na yung cases, tuloy-tuloy na siyang bumaba until we hit mga 2,000 cases per day. But at that point, hindi pa naman nawala yung virus completely. Parang it's just there, pero we can actually live with it. And that's what we realized there. So, syempre, at that time, we didn't know na may ganun pala. At that time, we thought, pwede magka-resurgence yan, baka bumalik yan. We didn't know na the resurgence will be triggered, the new wave will be triggered by a new variant. So nung pumasok yung alpha and beta around February, dun siya nag-trigger ng new surge. But we were okay before then. And then nung na-contain na natin yung alpha and beta variant, also within 2 to 3 months, we were okay until nakapasok ng Delta. So it seems to be hindi ma cycle, pero it seems to be a pattern, and it was also reported in the New York Times. But we have been seeing it all over the Philippines. Walang surge na tumatagal more than 3 months. I think there could be some kind of biological explanation. And it has to do with something na nabasa ni Father Nick, again, si Father Nick yung aking resource list lagi, na about, actually, ang nasabi doon, based on a paper, is 2% of the population carry 90% of the viral load. So, ibig sabihin, hindi pantay-pantay. Some people are naturally super spreaders, parang ganun, or potential super spreaders. And some people are not, parang they're weak spreaders, konti lang nakakawaan nila. So our guess is, sa 2 to 3 months cycle na yon, na-infect na yung 2% na yon. So pag naubos na yung super spreaders, then you don't have super spreader events anymore. You'll just have a tapering of. But anyway, these are just hypotheses. Syempre, working hypothesis for a paper that we're writing, research paper. Pero yun nga, ang bottom line is we saw the pattern that you said, that we mentioned. it seems to be na after 2 to 3 months, nawawala na siya or humihina na yung effect niya sa population. And that's why we're actually confident na, we'll have a bright Christmas. We're confident na tuloy-tuloy na to. We're not seeing a new variant. Yes. Yes,
Yun na nga yung tatanong ko eh. Diba? Because nagbumabagal na yung transmission, syempre pinupush na ngayon ng mga businessmen na mag-ease na to alert level 3 or even 2. Sa tingin nyo, okay ba yon? Kasi even some officials of the Department of Health, they're worried about easing kasi baka daw na-confuse yung mga tao sa mga findings, no? Would you recommend an easing? Kasi matatapos na mag-October 15 na.
Well, I mean, we actually support yung easing. Of course, there are things now can be discussed. Maybe hindi pa tayo ready for, large social gatherings of mixed vaccinated and unvaccinated. Pero if we can work out the details, we actually support yung easing. I mean, I think, ako personally, this is just, again, my personal opinion. Baka may magsabing, I'm speaking for some institution. But I think we could already be at level 3 right now. Kasi yung assessment namin, NCR is at moderate risk. And some of the surrounding regions are in moderate risk. And, because of this finding, yung cycle na 2 to 3 months or yung period, we're not as worried na resurgence na massive na biglang magtataas, mag-ECQ or something. Parang we're not seeing that. I mean, I'm not seeing that, and si Father Nick, he's not seeing that. So that's why right.
Are we also seeing less centers? Are some centers diminishing or now completely lost from the picture of multiple centers?
Sorry, Robbie, I'm not sure about what you mean by centers.
Kasi yung parang nung una, di ba? First search, it was all about NCR.
Okay.
And then we started to get NCR under control, and then we started seeing epicenters spread out in different regions. Are we seeing less epicenters now?
Yes, of course, because Robbie, we follow that yung hypothesis na it has a 2 to 3 month span in a region. So tapos na sa NCR, tapos na sa Calabarzon, tapos na sa Central Luzon, tapos na rin sa Cebu, tapos na rin sa Davao, or patapos na rin sa Davao. I mean, sa NCR patapos na rin. So, parang kina-cross out na lang natin yung mga iba-ibang regions. Hindi ka na pwede dito, hindi na dito mangyayari dito. So, yung mga vulnerable na lang, yung mga regions na hindi pa nagkakaroon ng surge. Pero right now, tinamaan na rin yung Northern Luzon. I mean, that's where the surge is right now. Western Visayas. I believe yung hindi pa masyadong tinamaan, siguro, Eastern Visayas, we haven't seen a surge there. So, and maybe some parts of Mindanao. So, ayan. But I think, like you said, nababawasan yung mga centers, yung mga centers for the pandemic.
Your projections are based on DOH data, di ba? Kasi
Yes,
I'm asking dahil ang sabi ng DOH, Okta daw, you're confusing the public with some of your findings. Ang
contributing daw to the infodemic.
Oo nga. What's your comment on that?
Well, I heard that, but I'm not even sure I actually understood yung context of that. So I can't really, comment on that because I don't really understand yung context, what it was specifically referring to. If it was about yung proclamations, there's definitely a point there. But I can't really comment on that because I'm not really, I haven't really, let's say, dissected or understood it.
But your data is based on DOH lang, di ba? Sa kanila
Yes.
nanggagaling kasi they are still trying to verify. I think hindi pa completely tapos yung pag-aaral nila. Kung bumababa nga yung numbers or bumababa ang testing because more people are taking antigen tests which are not being reported. And also there's the possibility na yung mga taong fully vaccinated hindi nagpapatesting dahil akala nila vaccinated naman ako, bakit ako may COVID?
Well, yeah, those are fair, right? Those are fair points, Ami. Yes, we use DOH data. Yes, bumaba yung testing. There's some antigen testing being used now. Those are fair points. We also look at some LGU data when it's available, and yung nakikita nila on the ground, even counting yung mga antigen testing, it's still also a decrease in cases, hospitals getting freed up. Kasi dati mataas yung hospital utilization natin, nasa 70% yung hospital beds. Ngayon, nasa 53% na lang. So that's a significant decrease. So even if, let's say, some people may be getting the virus, na vaccinated na sila and they're not showing symptoms, asymptomatic, it means na maybe parang wala nang effect. Baka parang flu na lang. I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that's the explanation, but maybe, what we want, yung end game is, to transform coronavirus into like flu-like, na parang we don't have to lock down. We never lock down because of flu. So if we can transform it, that na parang harmless na siya, people are not dying, only a few are becoming severe or critical, then there's no problem either. I mean, yun yung perspective ko eh. Pero, yun nga, I understand they want to review the data because they're the official government body, so they have to be more careful in their statements. So, okay lang naman yan. That's, we respect that.
But how do you position yourself now in view of the DOH itself saying that your pronouncements are adding to their burden, no? Because they're having to explain or clarify information, I guess, that didn't exactly come from you. But this is how you, Sec Berheres, seem to state the confusion that she says arises from your pronouncement. So I just want to ask you exactly, when you came into this, what did you expect to actually do in regard to how the public was supposed to take in this information? Were you just another source of information? And did you at any time expect that you would be at odds with the DOH on matters of data interpretation and stuff?
Right.
Did you foresee that?
Yeah, points well taken, Lucci. And when we came into this, I didn't really expect na we would get. I would get media coverage, for instance. I was just surprised when it started happening last year. I'm just a simple professor.
We keep interviewing you.
Yes, I
Kasalanan
know.
namin to.
Yeah, but I'm just a desk guy. A computer guy. I do models. I do research. When we find that things are, if I'm not doing COVID work and I see what's out there, I see that when I look at the numbers, I see it differently from what other people are seeing. And I think, ako personally, kung nakikita ka na ganito, kunyari, nakikita ka na, hey, we're on a downward trend, pero nobody's saying it. I think I have, as a citizen of the country, as a public servant, a moral obligation to share what I'm seeing. Maybe I shouldn't make pronouncements. Maybe I don't have to make pronouncements, but at least I can share it with the DOH, with
Professor,
right.
There's another side to that question that I'm curious about, because nung pumasok ka dito and you suddenly became somebody that people were following on social media, and now fast forward, you're not even the only Guido on social media who's looking into numbers that people are following, di ba? I'm curious, sa side naman sa nakikita mo sa mga kababayan natin, when they engage with you, when they ask you questions, from the questions that people were asking last year to the questions that they're asking now, anong insights mo about, are people learning? Are people appreciating data? Are they asking more sophisticated questions? What are you seeing on the side of people who are engaging with you, even challenging you?
Right, and those are that's an interesting point, Robbie, because last year I wasn't really involved in social media. at all. Parang, I was just doing our reports, and then when I get interviews as public service, then we have these interviews. And then this year, parang I started on the social media. I mean, there's, as you mentioned, may other Guido, si Edson Guido, he publishes data insights din naman. He looks at statistics, and nobody questions that na parang it's confusing or anything, or it's wrong. So parang, I mean, it's out there. So he's just adding to the discussion a different perspective. And gusto ko rin sanang gano'n rin naman yung interpretation sa akin na, it's a different perspective based on the models that I use. We're not saying the model I'm using is correct. It's just a different appreciation of the data. Pero once I got engaged with the social media, sa Twitter, for example, yung discussion is very interesting kasi the people there who post are a lot more informed. Some of them are, they have the same insights, or, they have good questions, similar questions sa mga tinatanong nyo, like, is it really about is the trend real? Is it about the decrease in testing or something like that? And, people there have various useful inputs, and they also appreciate the data and the patterns that we're seeing, nakikita na rin nila. Like, that is nasabi ko dito, every Tuesday and Wednesday, we see lower numbers. Yun, parang alam na rin yun ng yung mga social media followers natin, because they understand these weekly patterns, etc. So the people generally are, at least dito sa platform na to, more informed about what's going on, and that's good, because when we inform people, we empower them, diba? I mean, that's the goal naman, diba? Information dissemination. We shouldn't have monopoly on information. It should be, that's my personal belief, na it should be publicly available. Of course, it should be put into context na, this is what I'm seeing, this is my appreciation of the data.
So, tanungin ko din yung question nila, is the downward trend real, and what can stop us from having a Merry Christmas 2021?
Well, I think, what can stop us, siguro, would be a new variant that we're not seeing yet. But, 2 months, I doubt na a new variant. I mean, statistically speaking, it seems unlikely that a new variant will come up within that time, unless andyan na siya somewhere, pero hindi pa siya masyadong nabibigyan ng media attention. But it seems unlikely. So that means na, at least for the foreseeable future, I think we should be good. Kasi yung India, they had a massive surge last April. Since then, I mean, almost half a year na, wala pang resurgence. And that's what we're hoping that we'll find. We believe the trend is real. Gana din nakita natin sa other countries. They're all going down. Malaysia, Thailand, yung mga nagka-surge, halos kasabay natin. It's just that Singapore, siguro, right now having a surge. And Russia, I think maybe a few other countries na mabibilang ko. Pero, right now tayo, downward trend, except for some provinces, Northern Luzon, maybe Zamboanga, gana. Pero, it's really a good outlook for us, people who are tired of the COVID, for people who lost jobs, for the economy, businesses that closed. Kaya nga, we're okay with opening up, so we can help the businesses recover during this fourth quarter, which is very important for businesses.
Professor, I'm just curious. I'll just take a stab that you're reading a lot of stuff and reading more than we are at greater depth and detail than we are also. But I remember looking at this report by I think it was Philippine Airlines, saying that, look, ang dami na naming linipad. All the data suggests that flying with all the protocols in place, with all the safety measures, the good news is it's not a spreader at all. The data backs them up. I'm just wondering, with your scan of everything, what are some of the things that the numbers suggest are, that's not a spreader, that's not a spreader. These are things that actually things are in place. Or for that matter, here are some activities that numbers do suggest we should be a bit more careful about.
Well, yes. I'll give an example. Yung restaurants, our preconceived notion was that they are super spreader events or they're spreader events because syempre people remove their face mask. Pero when I heard yung one member of the restaurant association talking about yung experiences nila, at least anecdotally, they're not claiming na, across the board they have this data, but they're saying na they haven't heard of a situation na may nagkaroon ng spreader event sa restaurants. Of course, it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just that based on the data that they have. So may mga ganong situations. What we're hearing on the ground is that most of yung spreader events natin recently due to the Delta, mostly was in homes. Pero aside from homes, yun nga, yung mga orphanage, yung mga convent. Kaya sa Quezon City, marami mga yan. Sinabi sa amin ng Quezon City, marami mga yun nga, parang clergy, mga priests and sisters na nagkahawaan, and a lot of them were not vaccinated. Ang sinabi kasi because they were charitable, they offered others to have themselves vaccinated first before them, so we can respect and appreciate yung decision nila, not because they don't want to be vaccinated, but yun nga, pinauna lang nila yung iba. So, but these are some of the events na nakikita natin. Regarding other events, it's not clear. What could be spreader events? Maybe large gatherings. Yes, it's possible. Pero yung mga ibang sinasabi natin, and maybe it's because the dynamics have changed already because we have a lot of vaccinated na. I know some offices have 90 to 100% vaccinated. So maybe previously offices are spreader events if people, get together there. Pero maybe because of the rate of vaccination, nabuwasan na rin yung mga spreader events natin, and mostly tinatamaan nga yung mga unvaccinated.
Okay. Professor Guido David of Octa Research, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Good evening.
Please stay with us. The Chiefs will be right back. Welcome back, the Chiefs here on One News. Now joining us, senatorial candidate and Free Legal Assistance Group Chairman, Attorney Chel Jokno. Good evening, Attorney Chel.
Good evening, Attorney Chel.
Attorney Chel, I'll admit I don't know where to start because on the one hand, of course, we want to talk about your candidacy, but I also do want to talk about Chito Gascon. I know he was your colleague, your comrade, your friend. I was wondering, sir, your thoughts on the passing of Chito Gascon, because I do have some questions that I thought you'd be one of the most qualified to ask about what comes next for the CHR.
Well, first of all, I'd like to extend my condolences and the prayers to the family of Chito, his wife Melissa, and Kiara, and all of the members of his family. It's such a great loss, not only for them, but for the entire country. We lost someone who was really steadfast and had the fortitude for to fight for human rights at the time when it was most unpopular, and he really held the line. I can say nothing except really commendations for everything that Chito has done for human rights. Kaya saludo po kami sa kanya, and we will continue to fight the way he fought, with dignity, with the steadfastness, and with fortitude.
And certainly there's a lot more to discuss about Chito himself, but I do want to prompt this question, and that's this by way also of segueing into your candidacy. But what happens to the CHR? What comes next to the CHR? I imagine President Duterte, of course, will have to name a new chairperson. And then what do you see next for the CHR?
Well, a lot will depend on who the president will appoint and what his marching or her marching orders will be. I hope that it will be someone with a track record in human rights, someone who will continue the legacy of Chair Chito. But it's really hard for me to say given the present dispensation.
So, pwede na mag-segue.
Election na.
Pupunta na kaming election. No, but human rights is your advocacy as well, no? Kaya tinatanong yan eh. But you are saying the rivals now, nag-file na lahat. Have you firmed up your approach, your message to the people? Kasi it's a very wide field, no? And you need to grab people's attention. Anong focus ninyo ngayon apart from human rights? Are you adding more to your campaign spiel?
Well, I think a lot of people noticed the face mask I was wearing.
Yes.
Yes, actually, that's true.
And,
Ipin, bakit nga ba yun?
well,
Pinantsawan siya ni President Duterte, di ba? Pinagsinukan niya ano. Sabi ko, ang ganda ng mask. Yeah, that's very nice.
ano lang naman eh, alam nyo, matagal ko namang sinasabi to na kailangan talaga may kagat ang hustisya. At ako'y...
From teeth to the law.
Okay, justice and human rights. Sige, okay, maganda yun. Ano pa yung focus? Ano pang iba?
Well, marami kasing mukha ang justice, lalong-lalo na dito sa pandemic. I just came up really with this term, which I call pandemic justice. We've seen so much injustice during the last couple of years, especially during the lockdown, and that must be corrected. The injustice, for example, of the frontliners not receiving the benefits they are due, the injustice of our money, the people's money being used apparently to buy overpriced medical supplies, the injustice of so many small and medium business establishments not getting any help from the government when we can obviously see that they're gasping to survive, the injustice of so many people losing their jobs, especially the youth, because youth unemployment is like 3 times the rate of the national average. And government apparently not even caring about it. And I can go on and on with the injustice that is happening in this pandemic. Yun ang dapat talaga mabigyan at matugunan ng atensyon ng ating pamahalaan. If they will not do it, then the next administration should.
Can you tell us more about your party? Is the Liberal Party will be helping you as well, right? But are you like Vice President Leni Robredo? You're it's a new party, no? So more or less, you're not part of this bigger LP. Can you tell us more about it? Wala rin kayong political machinery? Ganun ba yung ano nun?
Well, thank you for that question. Once and for all, I'd like to clarify, I am not a member of the Liberal Party. I have never been a member of the Liberal Party. There are some quarters who are trying to portray me as that, pero hindi po totoo yun. I am now a member, when I ran last year in the 2019 election, I was not an organic member of the LP. I am now a member of the KANP, Katipunan ng Nagkakaisang Pilipino, which is a very new political party composed of mostly young people. And that's really what attracted me to the party, because it's a new brand of politics. They are doing away with Trapo type of politics, that type of political dynasty thing that we know so well from other political parties. Wala po sa kanilang philosophy yan. And we are fielding around more than 60 local government officials in the coming election. I am one of those who will be running in the national field. And I really look forward to it because this is new blood and this is the type of political party I believe our country needs. It's not tied to any old political interest. It's not tied to any vested interest in the country. And that's exactly the kind of politics that our country needs in the coming years.
Michelle, how do you feel about the fact that, Bongbong Marcos, whose father's regime saw, human rights violations that your family personally suffered, particularly your dad, no? But how do you feel about him coming quite close to power again? And in this race, as he himself said, no, siya lang yata ang kumakatawan sa administrasyon right now, if you look at the landscape. I mean, based on those who filed. How do you feel about that, being the son of KPP, Jokno?
It's not unexpected. I'm not surprised that he has done this. They've been planning this for decades. I remember in the early 2000s, talking actually with some journalists who were pointing out to me that there were so many slick videos coming out, well-produced on YouTube, that portrayed the martial law years as the golden years of the Philippines. And even then, I began to realize that that was all in preparation for a comeback by the Marcoses. And we've seen it even in the previous elections, how they have really tried to get a foothold in politics in the country. Kaya sa akin, this is obvious naman na yun ang talagang ambisyon nila noon.
Yeah.
Attorney Chel, I know, but how do you feel about the fact that, it could happen realistically, and are you making extra efforts? I'm not saying that you should, I'm not meaning anything by this, but if you were to strategize politically, I'm sure one of your objectives would be to make sure that it doesn't happen, that kind of comeback, right? But I'm just wondering if Isang Bayan and you, are you coming up with some very specific plan to make sure that that does not happen?
Well, first of all, it's never been personal for me, or even I would say for the Diokno family. Although we did suffer at the hands of the Marcoses, it's not something that we take as act that we should take vengeance for or anything like that. It's always been, for me, the issues involved. And what concerns me, what makes me a little bit frustrated and angry is the fact that if ever they do come back to power, then we will be experiencing the very same type of leadership. I don't know if you would even give it that name, or the very same type of power politics that we had during the Marcos dictatorship. And that is really what I am opposed to. I think that what our country needs right now is more inclusiveness, more acceptance of the diversity of the Filipino, and more efforts to really make sure that no one is left behind. When you have leaders like that politicians, like that, who will grab power, then you can expect there will be more divisiveness, there will be more issues of corruption, and there will be more people left behind by that type of governance.
I just want to tack on another question to that, not on the side of the Marcoses, but on the side of Isko Moreno. Because last week, he sort of added to that framing, to that narrative, na away to ng dalawang pamilya lang eh. Away lang to ng Marcoses at saka mga Aquino. It's going to be a long campaign. As you said, that revisionist narrative a lot has been invested in that. And now you have not only Bongbong Marcos, but also ostensibly one of the front runners adding to that narrative. What does that do to the narrative that you're trying to educate people about that no, it's not just about two families.
Well, I think it's a perfect reflection of what kind of politics he's bringing to the table. And I think that will make people think twice about whether they want to support him or not. As I said earlier, it's a very divisive. When you speak like that, you're really being divisive. And that's the last thing our country needs today.
Attorney, the voter registration was resumed today and there are again very long lines. Halos wala ng distancing across the country, not even in Metro Manila. And you know, Senator Kiko Pangilinan, the running mate of VP Robredo, said he believes these are new voters who are anti-establishment, and of course he expects them to go for the opposition. When you see these long lines, do they give you hope that Senator Pangilinan is correct?
You know, I think if you look at the history of our elections, when you have many first-time voters wanting to vote, and even those who did not vote in the last two elections, who got deregistered wanting to get back into the rolls, that's a good sign always for the opposition. Because when pag may mga election naman na parang walang paki ang electorate, then that tends to favor the administration. So for me, it's a very good sign.
That people want change.
Apparently, yes. And I understand why they do. Because the pandemic has been an eye-opener, I believe, for many people who otherwise would not really have any concerns about politics.
Yes, kasi ang pitch ng kabila is continuity, of course. And they are pointing to the surveys that still tend to show that people still want continuity, at least at this point.
But it depends on what you look at in the surveys. If you look at the questions that relate to the president himself and his popularity, you would have basis for saying that. But if you look at their answers to the questions about the management of the pandemic, I don't think they want continuity. I think they see how inadequate the response has been.
How do you view the political landscape now? I mean, how do you view all the other candidates, knowing as how you perform? You figured at 21st place in the last elections, right? What are you going to do differently? How are you going to make sure that this time around, you, the opposition, for lack of a better name, are going to do better and actually win? Or do you think that you have a better chance now with the way things are going with PDP Laban, for example, and, you know, Sara Duterte choosing not to run and so on and so forth? How are you reading things?
The landscape has really changed a lot since 2019. Part of it is the fact that this is a term-ending election. So the people on the ground, the local government officials, don't really have any fear about defying the administration because they know that it could change. Not like in 2019 where they were certain that the next 3 years would still be under the same president. And that really made them very reluctant to support any opposition candidates. Okay. Second, because of the pandemic, we've really gone online so much. Not the whole country, but a substantial part of the population. We almost do everything online. We learn online, we socialize online, we shop online, we get our news online. And that, in a way, has leveled the playing field for progressive candidates. Because if we can get our message across on social media platforms, we can do it without having to spend as much as we would have had to spend otherwise.
Except the opponent will do the same thing. I mean, you know, it does level the playing field, but they will do the same thing. They probably will do one better because of their...
Pagalingan yan. It depends on how good your messaging is. It depends on how viral you can get. It depends on how creative your people are. Yeah. And at least doon may laban kami.
Yeah. Speaking of messaging, and not just messaging, but if you look at the numbers, double-digit drops for President Duterte on corruption, on dealing with the pandemic. People are still concerned about jobs. And these are still the same things that every election, the analysts say, kailangan malapit sa bituka. It is about jobs, getting the economy back on track, and so on. You think human rights is something that people vote on? It is an issue, but is it something that you think matters to the majority of Filipino voters?
Human rights really matters a lot to me, but I don't think the ordinary voter even considers it when it comes to an election.
Well, in fact, Senator Bato said today that if he is elected, well, if he pushes through anyway with his presidential bid, if he is elected, he will continue Tokhang, although without the EJK DAO. What's your response to that kind of message?
Well, I think he should really seriously study that problem, because if you really want to have a lasting solution to the problem of criminal syndicates, especially drugs, you have to have a whole of government approach that must understand the justice system and that must include the justice system in the solution. There's no way you will ever address and stop drug syndicates without getting the heart of it, meaning the people who are behind it. You can do a million Tokhangs, it's not going to stop drug syndicates. You need to go after the drug lords. And that's where this government has shown a lot of fear. Takot sila. Ayaw nilang habulin yung mga drug lord. Ang kaya nilang habulin yung mga nasa kalye. But that's never going to stop the real operations of drugs. And it hasn't, even as we have seen, despite the thousands of people have been killed, it has not stopped the operations of these syndicates.
You think the anti-crime campaign will still be an issue in 2022? It was the strength of Rodrigo Duterte actually in 2016. He promised to do, well, he promised to kill people, and people elected him.
Well, you know, it's really going to be a question of what is directly affecting the ordinary voter. And at the moment, it's a question of food, it's a question of jobs, it's a question of small businesses that are being affected. Tingin ko, that's going to be the major conversation in the coming elections.
Okay, what about are you part of this pink explosion that Leni Robredo is using also, and many of her supporters are on to that? Are you going to be part of that? And how do you think the voters are going to differentiate that from the yellow, which obviously is something that they're pivoting away from with a new color? But do you think that actually conveys a message that is different from what yellow stands for?
Well, first, I do support Vice President Leni Robredo. I've said this many times before. And I think she can stand on her own, regardless of whatever kind of brand they try to stick on her. Her achievements speak for themselves, and she's really, of all the high officials in the government in the pandemic, I really think she's shown the brightest when it comes to helping people get back on their feet. And I hope that that will be the message that she can deliver to the people, that talagang ang puso niya ay para sa tao and ginagawa niya talagang lahat para makatulong despite a meager budget and despite all the bashing that she has received.
Attorney Chel, I know a lot of people, of course, who support you, and the people who support you can picture you as a senator. But their biggest concern is, I want to picture him as candidate. I want to see how he's going to win. But yun yung tanong ko, because you talked about how so many things have changed, and you're right. Numbers have changed, social media has changed, the entire digital environment has changed. I'm just curious, as a candidate, what has changed in you? We see your humor, we see you embracing Ipin for the win. I've seen, nakakatawa yung mga Ipin for the win. We see people like Vice Ganda supporting you. But you yourself, as a candidate, honestly, anong napapansin niyo? What are you more game for now? What has changed in you as a candidate?
Well, I think I'm much, much more relaxed in this arena than I was in 2019. It was a big jump for me to go from being a lawyer, a litigator, and a teacher to the arena of politics. And it was really a major adjustment for me. While I was used to being in front of people, most of the time, ang kaharap ko noon, mga abogado, mga judge, mga justice. And that is, of course, such a different crowd from speaking to ordinary people. To me, that was the biggest challenge and a big learning experience in 2019, as well as learning how to deal with social media, because I was a total newbie at that time. Now, in the last 2 years, I've spent literally thousands of hours engaging directly with people from all walks of life, both online and offline. I mean, before the lockdowns and the pandemic, it was face-to-face, but we all had to go online after that. And it's enriched my experience. I think it's enriched even my ability to communicate and my ability as well to deliver a message online and in a personal situation.
Are you surprised by how much content and how much information you can cram into a few seconds on TikTok? I imagine a lot from older generations would start from a base of disparaging and how much can you communicate, puro gimmick lang yan. But are you surprised by how much you can actually convey?
It's amazing. It's really amazing, and it's been an eye-opener for me. When I first started doing it, ako rin ay hindi ako sure kung ano ba to at kung kaya ko bang gawin yan. But I realized that there are so many ways to communicate. Some of my most effective TikToks, I haven't even said a word. And yet, I managed to deliver a message. And that's really been a learning experience for me.
How about in person? Can you cite some examples of what you've learned interacting, especially with the mass vote?
Well, I am very fascinated with how people approach me without any hesitation. In 2019, it was, minsan naririnig ko pa sila eh. Parang, si Chel, joke na ba yan? And then I would sense a sort of hesitation about kung pwede akong lapitan. But now, even when I wear a mask or a face shield, I get people running up to me without any, thinking twice, and they just gush. And that is quite energizing to me and uplifting.
Last na lang. Sorry. How do you feel about being in the same body as Robin Padilla, who's figuring really strongly in the surveys, and of course Rafi Tulfo, and dami mga artista. How do you feel about that, frankly? I mean, kasi nga perception sa'yo is
Hindi,
siya intellectual,
Hindi, kasama talaga sa politika yan. It's new, but it's not something I didn't expect. I mean, in fact, I've even had some interactions with a few of them. So.
Okay. Attorney Chel Jokno, kumakandidato po bilang senador. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Michelle.
Thank you.
Good night.
That's all for this special edition of The Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
And I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5, and we are One News.